Hello everyone! The year-to-date result is one of the most common calculations in accounting and financial reporting. The year-to-date is a period from the beginning of the year to the current date. The year can be a calendar year, which begins on the 1st of January, or a fiscal year, which is different from a calendar year. For example, a fiscal year can begin on the 1st of July and end on the 30th of June of the next year. As a default, the regular pivot table can show a calendar year-to-date as a running total, but not the fiscal year-to-date. So in this video, you are going to see two ways how to still get the fiscal year-to-date in a pivot table. The first way is a trick using the source data of the pivot table. The second way is much more elegant and does not involve changing the source data. So stay tuned till the end of the video. My source data range has the sales of certain products and the sale dates. Let's convert this data range to a table by clicking in it and pressing Ctrl and T together. And add a pivot table. I'm going to place the years and months fields in the rows area and the units sold in the values area. The years and months were generated automatically from the date. The default year of the regular pivot table is a calendar year. Let's add subtotals and remove the grand total. The pivot table has an inbuilt capability to show year-to-date numbers. Just right-click on the unit sold and choose to show values as running total in this case with months as the base field. Let's rename the value fields for better understanding. This is just going to be a calendar year-to-date, where from January to December, the sales of each month are added to the sum of the previous ones. But I need the fiscal year-to-date, which does not start in January and is not directly supported by the pivot table. So for the regular pivot table, I will need a trick, which involves adjusting the source data. I will need to add an extra column to the source data for the fiscal year and calculate it using a formula. For a fiscal year-to-date beginning on the 1st of July, I will need the year of the date, which is 6 months away from the date in column A. Let's zoom in. So starting from the 1st of July 2024, the fiscal year will be 2025. Now I will refresh the pivot table and add the fiscal year. But the order of the months in the pivot table still follows the default custom list of the calendar year. So the first thing that I could do to arrange the months in the order of a fiscal year is to sort them manually by dragging each month into its proper position. Under More Sort options, make sure in the Sort dialog box that the sort options are set to manual. To rearrange items by dragging, hover the cursor over the item's border until a 4-pointed arrow appears, and then just drag the item into the correct position. If more example data is added to the source table and the pivot table is refreshed, the sorting order will still apply. Or just sort the dates from oldest to newest, because the months here are the result of grouping dates. For the second method, I'm going to use a power pivot. A power pivot may look somewhat similar to a regular pivot table, but it offers a much broader range of calculation options. To enable the power pivot add-in, go to the File tab, Options, Add-ins. In the Manage box, click COM Add-ins and then Go. Check the Microsoft Power Pivot for Excel box and then click OK. You should see the Power Pivot tab on the ribbon. I'm going to use the same table as in method 1, so I removed the fiscal year that I added there. And I'm just going to change the name of the table to Sales for demonstration purposes. This time, when I will be adding a pivot table, I will check the box to add the data to the data model. This way, I will be able to use the additional functions of a Power Pivot. To calculate the fiscal year to date, I'm going to use a powerful time intelligence function called TOTALYTD. But for correct calculation, this function needs a proper calendar table with unique values, no blanks, and consecutive dates from beginning to end. Unfortunately, my sales table does not qualify for such a date table. So I will need to create such a date table using Power Pivot. The table will be created based on the dates that are already in the data model. To calculate the date range, the earliest date in the model is taken as the minimal date. In my case, this is 3rd of January 2024, and the latest date in the model is taken as the maximal date. In my case, it is the 20th of May 2025. The date range returned is dates between the beginning of the calendar year of the minimal date and end of the calendar year of the maximal date. So the missing dates are filled out. You can also update the date table if there are new dates. To this new calendar table, I'm going to add a new column with the fiscal year, using the same formula as in method 1. So I will select a column and type in the formula that determines the year of the date, which is 6 months away from the date in the first column. But unlike the first method, I'm not changing the source data. I will also add one more column for the fiscal number of months. So July will be the first month, August the second, and so on. And I will use a similar formula. I will need this column to sort the month names in the order of a fiscal year. In this calendar table, I have month names, and not months grouped from dates. So starting from the 1st of July 2024, the fiscal year will be 2025. To sort the month column, I'm going to select it, and in the Home tab, under Sort by Column, specify fiscal month number as the column to sort by. Ideally, the values area should be filled from the fact table, and the filters, columns and rows areas should be filled from the dimension tables. The relationship between the dimension and fact tables has to be defined. In the data model, my sales table is a fact table that has the numbers, and the calendar table is a dimension table which has the information about the dates and should filter the fact table. The relationship between the two tables should be made using the dates column. This is a so-called one-to-many relationship, because for each unique date in the calendar table, there may be several dates in the sales table. Please note how the month names got arranged in the order of a fiscal year. Now I need a new measure or calculation for the fiscal year-to-date. I will use the total year-to-date function. This function evaluates the year-to-date value of the expression in its first argument in the current context. The evaluation context is provided in this case by the fields of the rows area. So I will type total year-to-date and then the expression, which in this case is the sum of the units sold Then comes the dates column from the calendar table. And at the end, I have to specify the ending date of the fiscal year, which is 30th of June. Total year-to-date is a DAX function. DAX is a language for handling data models through the use of formulas and expressions. Let's also tidy up the number formatting. Let's also compare the calculated fiscal year-to-date numbers to the sum of units sold. And the numbers are correct. This method of calculating year-to-date numbers is also much more secure than a regular running total. If I add a running total, as was shown in the previous method, and change the sorting order of the months from January to December, the running total will change, but the fiscal year-to-date numbers will still be correct and not depending on the order of the months. So the total year-to-date calculation is especially useful if you cannot put together such a list of months for the running total. For example, if the months are in the filters area. To change the sorting of the months back to the fiscal year, just set the sort options to data source order. By the way, if you would like to have the grand total for the fiscal year to date, then in the Power Pivot window, you will need to update manually the date table range to full fiscal years. For grand total, the formula evaluates the context of the entire dataset, which defaults to the most recent year. So the total fiscal year to date would be the total for that year. If this should be an issue for you, then there's the following solution. I can use the SUMX function to iterate over the table of fiscal years and calculate the correct totals. SUMX returns the sum of an expression evaluated for each row in a table. Its first argument is the table containing the rows for which the expression will be evaluated. For the table of fiscal years to be used in the SUMX function, I'm going to use the values function that will return a one-column table with distinct values from the specified column, in this case the column of fiscal years. The second argument of SUMX is the expression which has to be evaluated, and in my case it is total year-to-date. Let's also add subtotals. The row fields provide the context also for the values function. So the total year-to-date will be calculated for each year and for both years for the grand total. And if you like this video, please like and subscribe for more contents like this.